Hey everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create, and we are working on SeaWorld, a Stamperia album, and I realized when I sat down I'm missing a couple of components, but we're going to go ahead and get started with what we have. So this is page 4 and 5, and they're going to be mirror images of each other, and there's going to be, I'll set this aside, 3 major flaps. We're going to have a door flap, and then we're going to have a flap that comes down across the top. And then in the front on the door flaps, we're going to have 2 pockets. So that's what this is going to look like. And what I realized when I sat down is I have everything for page 5 except these pockets. But we'll get back to that in just a second. And I want to do them side by side just because it's so much faster than doing them one at a time. And because they are exactly the same, there is no mirror image because they're an up and down page. I thought we'd just go ahead and do them at the same time. So I'm trying to think about what I'm doing here. So the first component I want to add is the top flap because the doors are going to close on the inside. So I want this flap installed and then the 2 left-right flaps to be installed on top of this flange. So we're going to start there. Okay, so let's dry fit it, make sure it's the same width as the page, and it is. And I'm going to turn it around so that the edges are next to me the way I like to do it. Again, this is page 4. And this is the top of page 4. There we go. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing for page 5. And this will go on the top of page 5. Okay, like so. So there we go, those 2 flaps are in. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add these door flaps. So there'll be one on the left and one on the right for page 4. And we'll have the same thing for page 5, and I'm missing a flap. Might have to trim this down, but we'll start over here on page 4. So let's just go ahead and check and make sure these 2 are going to fit next to each other and underneath this flap. So I'm thinking, well, I'm looking at it right now. I want this to close smoothly, and I think it's going to. So I'm just pressing it into place and then trying to close the flap to see if it's going to close freely, because this is our chance to shorten these 2 panels if we need to. And you know what? I think I'm going to go ahead and take just a little bit off the edge. So I forgot to tell you what the measurements were. This panel is 5.5 by 8. 5.5 by 8. You'll need 1 for each page. And then these are 4.5 by 8. And you'll need 2 per page. And you're going to score 1/2 inch on the 4.5 inch side, and this one you're going to score on the 5.5 inch side. I'm going to go ahead and trim just a little, so it's 8 inches tall, but I'm going to trim a little off just so there's a little better clearance. And I took about a 1/16 of an inch off. And we're going to try that first and see how that feels. Yeah, that's going to be plenty of clearance. So I'm going to go ahead and lay this down. So again, 4.5 by 8, and I just took a smidge off just to make sure there's good clearance. And I'm going to marry up this corner and go up so I have that little gap at the top. Yep, that's nice. Perfect. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing on this side. So these are left, right flaps, again 4.5 by 8. shave off a little just to make sure you have good clearance. The other thing you could do is you could add a second score line here to create a little bit of a gusset for these flaps. I mean, you can't do it now because it's already installed, but prior to installing, you could have added like an 1/18 of an inch gusset. I'm not a huge fan of that for some reason. Lots of people do it, but I guess I don't like that big wide blank gusset. It's too wide to put designer paper on, but it's wide enough to be very obvious visually. So, okay, so there they are. So there's our doors, and then this is going to come down like so. Now the last thing we're going to do is install, ooh, I was going to install these pockets, but now I'm rethinking it. So here's what I had in mind, is the pockets, I didn't realize they were so tall, would be here, and then we'd slip tags in the pockets, and the tags would hold this flap closed. But we don't have to. We could just install the pockets and then have the tags be hidden beneath the flap. But I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try shortening this and see how that looks. And then I'll tell you the measurements once I make a decision. So it has to be short enough that it completely clears this flap in order for us to use it as a hold mechanism for the flap. Ugh. It's not wanting to go behind the gusset. There we go. So I think I like that look. So I think that's what we're going to do. So now let me tell you the measurements to make this. It's going to be 5 inches across. And then I think if we make it 3.5 is going to be a little bit too big. So 3 3/8. So I had originally 4, but 3 3/8 by 5, and you're going to score on 3 sides. So the other thing you can do is make it 5 inches, make it 4 inches tall, and score your 3 sides, lay it down, make your pencil mark, and then trim it after you've got your gussets folded. But if you want to cut it down to size out of the get-go, it's 5 inches across and 3, I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 3/8 high. 3 3/8 high, score 1/2 inch on 3 of the 4 sides. Okay, that's going to go right here. And you're going to need a total of 4 of those for the 2 pages, 2 each. And then I'm going to use graphic 45 tags, and I'll decorate them. But the large tag is a little too big, so I've actually trimmed off just the edge of it. So here's a full-size tag, and you can see it looks like I've taken off an inch off the bottom, and that way it's flush with the 8-inch page. You could also use a regular size tag. It just won't come up as far on the flap. Okay, so that's one. Now I had a second one, but it still needs to be trimmed down. Here it is. So again, this is 5 by 3 3/8. Score 3 inches on the score 1/2 inch on 3 sides. Score 1/2 inch on 3 sides, sorry. I'm just laying it down and using this to mark it because I want it to be the same height as its neighbor. And now we're ready to go. Okay, this is a fun page. I like pockets and tags, especially when they have a function like holding the flaps closed, right? So actually, I want it to be even on across the top, so I'm going to lay it down from the top down, so we have a nice continuous line. from one page to the next. Okay, so you can see, or you may not be able to see, but I'll show you. There's a nice continuous line because I measured from here and pressed down. If there's going to be anything that's not even, I'd rather have it be on the bottom. I think it's a little bit, your eye's going to be drawn to this location where the tag's going to be. So this will go like so, and then we'll put a tag in each pocket. And again, this one hasn't been trimmed yet. There'll be a tag in each pocket, and that'll hold everything in place. So this is page 4. We're going to do the same thing on page 5. On page 5, we've already put the top flap in, so we still have these two 4.5 by 8 inch flaps that need to go in. And remember, we took just a smidge off. Let me get my other tags ready. Just a smidge off the top so that so this will close freely. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first. And I'm taking about a 1/16 of an inch off the top. You can take more if you like. So now we have our left-right flaps ready to go. We're going to apply it to the corner and push up so that we wind up with that nice slight gap at the top like we want. And you know what I just realized right now? Because I've already, yeah, I've designed all the other pages. I'm realizing, and I haven't done it yet, so far I haven't used any magnets in the book. So I'm applying this to the right hand side of page 5. We may actually get away with using very few magnets in this book because I've designed flaps that use pockets to keep them closed. Huh, how about that? That's kind of unusual. I usually wind up with magnets on every page. Okay. There we go. Okay, nice. Okay, that closes nicely. And then we still need to add 2 pockets and 2 tags. And I did not bring those pockets in here, so I'm going to have to go get them. But again, they are 5 by 3 3/8. 5 by 3 3/8, so I'm going to need 2 of those. You're going to score a 1/2 inch on 3 out of the 4 sides. Hang on. Okay, I'm back, and I've got my 2 little pockets, and I'm going to go over the size again one more time. So this is 5.5 inches across and 3 3/8 down, and you're going to score 1/2 inch on 3 of the 4 sides. Okay, so 5 by 3 3/8. We're going to apply those just to the bottom of both of these flaps, and then we are going to put some tags in it to hold everything in place. Okay. I'm actually going to apply this one first. And I think I want my contrast sheet. I'm having a hard time seeing. So let's get this out. There we go. Okay, so there's one. Now we're going to apply the second one. Let's get the tape off. And I'm going to do the same thing where I'm just going to look for the top of this joining flap to come straight across. It's little details like this that really, you know, give the book a lot of real finished look. It just takes a little extra time, and it's so worth it. Sorry, I'm hesitating because I'm having a hard time seeing the edge of the pocket. I said pocket, but I meant flap, the edge of the flap. Okay. There we go. And there you go. Nice and even. And then we've got these 4 tags that are going to go inside the pockets to hold everything in place. And I'm going to show you, because I went ahead and trimmed the tags. And I'll show you how much I trimmed off. So here's how much I trimmed off. And it's right at 1 inch, but I can tell you from the top of the tag to the bottom is 7 3/4 inches. That's what I measured, because I wanted to make sure it was clear of the top of the album, so that tags were not necessarily sticking out of the book. It's okay if you want them to. That's a different kind of look, but I like my finished edges to enclose everything in the book and not have anything hanging over to get stuck or grab. It helps with protecting your pages. I see I turned this one the wrong way. And then I also have a graphic 45 tag die, so I'll be using that to mat these. And all of that will be, any information that you want on the supplies used in this project will be listed in the description. If you hit the show more button, the first thing you're going to see is the material list and some links back to our store, which we hope you take a look at. And then if you continue to scroll, you'll see the cut list for this album. In addition to the cut list, if you're familiar with the channel, you know that I run the banners across the side too. And I have to apologize, in my last video, for some reason I kept getting my pages mixed up. But if you run across something and you're not clear and you want to check before you cut, drop me a line in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I try to answer those comments within several hours, if not sooner. Occasionally they'll get hung up in a filter. That doesn't happen very often. And then the other way you can reach us is you can contact us through the email contact@scrapandcreate. So the word contact at, and then our name, scrap, and the letter N, create.com. And I'll answer your questions there as well. Either place works. So that's the end of page 4 and 5. When I get back, we're going to start decorating. Thanks, everyone. Hey everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create, and we are going to start working on page 4 and 5 of SeaWorld. And I laid out what the front of page 4 and 5 is going to look like. This piece right here is the divide, and I'm laying it out because there's lots of pieces and it can be kind of confusing. And if you want to make it just like I did, that's the other reason I went ahead and laid it out. What I have here, and I'm separating the two edges, is one of the pages, sorry, it's not the signature page, of the 12 by 12 collection. That's why it's this size. It is quite large. So I am using this image and I've cut it down. And so I'm going to split this between page 4 and 5. And it was kind of a challenge to figure out what I was going to do, but I finally figured it out. One of the things I don't usually do is I don't usually put a decorative piece of paper in the gusset area of the page. But because of the direction I'm taking here, I actually took a sliver out of the two halves, and I'm trying to figure out which way it goes. Not this way, I think it goes this way, yeah. And this piece is actually going to go in the gusset, and then this is going to be on page 5, page 4, page 5, page 4, and then this is the second half. So this is what page 4 looks like. We have a large flap on top, then we have these two pockets on the bottom, and then on the inside we've got these two doors that open. So essentially what I have done, and this is page 4, is this will be half of page 4, and then here's the other half of that on page 5. So it's going to look like this. So when you open page 4 and 5, you're going to have this dial in the middle of those two pages. And of course, again, I want to remind you that this came from the 12 by 12 collection pack. So if you want to make it the same, you'll need that size of an image. And then because this is 8 inches and 8 inches, so across that's 16 inches plus a ½ inch, 16 and a half. Obviously our 12-inch page wasn't going to cover both. So I took the center of the image, placed it toward the center of these 2 pages, and then I took another paper and I think, I'm not positive, but I think this is from the 8x8 collection. And because the 8x8, I had 2 of the 8x8s, I cut these 2 pieces from it. So if you look at it, there's an 8 right there, and it's split in half. And this is part of the 8, and it's split in half. And this is up and down. So this is one 8x8 cut into 4 pieces. And this is from the 12x12. And that's kind of my plan. Now, having said all that, you could have done it a little differently in that there's really, it's not necessary to put this into the gusset. You could have just split this image exactly in half. But this is kind of the direction that I took. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and start laying pieces in. So I'm going to set aside page 5 and the strip that goes in the gusset, and we're going to work on page 4. And so on the bottom we have 2 pockets, so they are nice, going to fit here nicely. And then up on top we've got these 2 pieces. So I'm not sure if I'm going to try to run something in between the 2 or not, because I think that might be a little too wide of a gap. So I haven't really decided yet. I might put something in between the 2. I'm going to start by laying down the 2 bottom pockets. And then the other decision I have to make is, do I want to shorten this image, the image right here? And if I do, I'm going to take it off the top. And if I take it off the top, you're going to see this slight exposure between the top flap and these pockets. Now, the last thing I want to tell you is this is all going to get held in place by tags. So there's going to be tags in these 2 pockets. So you actually won't see this design until you pull the tags out, and then it reveals the design, just so you know. So my plan, I think, is to go ahead and trim some off the top. So this is a continuous design that's split apart, and then I might shorten it on the top, but I haven't decided just yet. The other option would be to take a strip off the bottom and lay it behind it, between the pocket and the flap. So I haven't made that decision yet. So right now I'm going to go ahead and lay these 2 pieces in. And I'm going to start with this side. So I'm going to start first by dry fitting. It looks good, so I just need to get some ink on it and lay it down. Okay. So this is probably has the most features from an interactive perspective, but it's also the most complicated from how I've decided to cut out the papers. You don't have to make it this complicated. This could just be one piece on top with, you know, some matching pieces on the bottom. It doesn't have to be broken up the way I've done it. And I had designed the flaps before I figured out what paper I was going to use, and if I had it to do over again, I think I would have split this in half so that each one of these could have moved independently along with its pocket. It's not what I did, but if I had it to do over, I might have decided to do it that way. All right, okay, this is ready. Because the top piece here is going to be the most complex to lay in, and I still have some decisions to make, I think I'm going to go ahead and open it up and lay down the pieces that already been cut, where I don't really have to think about how they're going to go in. They just need to be glued down, and then we'll come back to the top flap at the end. Okay. So again, these are going to go up here and here, but for now I'm going to set them aside, and we're going to focus on what's inside. I'm going to set these aside, and let's get the main piece down. This is from the 8x8 collection, and it's just trimmed down just slightly to fit inside. So this is very simple. Because of the complexity on the rest of the flaps, I wanted to keep the inside pretty straightforward. Whoops. Okay, so the other reason I'm using tags in those pockets on the front is that's what's actually going to keep everything closed up, so there's no magnets on this page. And there won't be any magnets on page 5 either. 4 and 5 will be just mirror images of each other. Okay, that's in. That's beauteous. That was nice and easy. Okay, so I've trimmed out pieces. That goes on the A side. This is going to go up top, like so. I think that's what I decided. And these are going to lay in like so. And I need to trim these down a little bit. So let's go ahead. Oops, that's upside down. So that actually has a pretty bold word, so I want to make sure I get it right side up. So this is my other option. And this is kind of funky because it's split in half, so I don't really like that. The rest of his body's missing, so we're definitely going to use this side up. And I think I like this best. So I'm going to trim these down. Okay. And then this is the same. It needs to be trimmed down just a little bit, height and width. Not quite as much though. Ooh, I didn't get enough off the height, so I'm gonna try that one more time. Huh, that's interesting, because that seems really tight. Okay, let's try that again. Better. Okay. Oh, I forgot to re-ink that edge, but that's okay because you know what? It's mostly white, so it's not so obvious. I can see it, but if it was on darker, it would have really bothered me. I might have even tried to lift it and repair it. Okay, so now we're going to put in this top piece, and for that, I am going to turn it over so I can get the edges closer to me and I can see what I'm doing from a measurement perspective. So the first thing I'm going to do is try to get it the right width. There we go. And then figure out how much I need to shave off. Let's get some ink on it, put it in. Okay, once I get this in, I'm going to close everything up and we're going to go do page 5 because we're going to do those the upper top pieces for form 5 at the same time. Since it's part of a continuous pattern, I want to make that decision for both pages at the same time. But the rest of this stuff is pretty straightforward, so we'll get those installed and then we'll come back to the very A side of the top flap and finish deciding how we're going to actually get that installed. Okay, so there we go. So these two are going to close like so. And then we can go ahead and add these two pieces if I remember where I put them. Here they are. So yeah, these go side by side and they're going to, they should fit just right on top. And they're gonna go slightly into the pocket and you can see it's a continuous pattern. This is again one of the 8x8s and it's cut in half. And I did the same thing on page 5 and you'll see that when we get to it. So because they're too wide, I need to shave them down, but I don't want to shave from the inside because that's gonna break up my pattern. I'm gonna cut both of these, I'm gonna trim them down to size and I'm gonna trim on the outside edge so that the pattern goes across both panels. And I'm gonna go ahead and use my sheet here. To help me see how much I need to take off. Okay, that's done. Now let's do this side. It's the same thing. I actually kind of made this a little short. Normally I have it long enough that it'll actually go in the pocket. It's a little bit shy of that, but it's still going to work. Okay, there we go. So both of these now need to be inked and glued down. Okay. All right, let's get our contrast sheet back in here. Now, I actually think I'm going to move my contrast sheet so that I can line up these two pieces of paper so that they're very consistent across the top. And if I have my contrast in, I can't see that. So okay, it's in. So that's lovely. Okay. And then this is going to close like so. I just boogered up my corner. And I got to tell you, this is tight. Even though I trimmed down these flaps to be a little less than 8 inches, it still feels kind of tight to me. So you're definitely, it's going to want to curve a little bit. And like I said, we are going to use tags to hold all this closed. And for whatever reason, they're not handy right now, but I can demonstrate. So a tag's going to go in like so on both sides to hold it closed. But it is trying to bow a little bit. So if I had it to do again, these would either be shorter, or I would have added a second score line on the top here so that it could easily come over the top and not bow like what it's doing right now. You can kind of see it. It's going to close with the tags, but if I had a second score line, I think that would be ideal. And because I've already put in the decorative paper here, I can't really add a second score line. So you might still have a chance to do that if you haven't laid your paper in yet. I'm not terribly worried about it, but I just noticed it. I didn't notice it so much on just a black cardstock, but the more layers of paper you add, the thicker it gets. Okay, so that's page 4. We're going to set it aside, and we are going to take the cover of the upper cover away, and then we're going to focus on getting these in just like we did with that page. We're going to first put these in and then build from the, basically from the inside out. Oops, is that right? Yeah, that's right. So I think it's going to make for a really interesting effect, but it's fussy. Don't get me wrong. So you're going to measure, 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 and then cut. Because if you get two, well, originally when I was planning this, I thought I only had one pack of 12 by 12, so I was really worried about if I miscut, I wouldn't have another one of these patterns. But then I went ahead and opened a second pack because I just couldn't get finished with the album. I didn't have enough paper. So if you decide to do it with just one pack of 12 by 12s, be sure you really measure 2 or 3 times before you cut, because you only get one of each pattern. Which is interesting. I kind of developed most of my design skills around Graphic 45 and the idea of having at least two of each. So it was kind of different when I started shifting gears and working with Ciao and Stamperia, where you get one design of each. It took me a little while to get used to that. Because it definitely had a pretty big impact on my design process, the way I had previously designed. Okay, so here's our single piece that's going to go in here. This is from the 8x8. It's just trimmed down to fit in here. And like I said, the outside's very complicated, so I wanted to keep the inside very simple. It's already bulking up enough. Okay. So we've got that and these. So it's very consistent with the other one. I'm just looking at the word orientation and flipping them right side up. And these, again, need to be trimmed and inked. Let's see if I've got the right height. Oh, I know why. I was thinking, why is this not fitting? And I keep trimming it like this is an 8-inch flap, and it's not. If you recall in the build process, I made this slightly smaller than 8 inches. And that's why this is on the first one, I was like, why is this working? So again, this is your opportunity to either add a gusset here or to make these flaps a little bit shorter. If they're already installed, if your flaps are already installed, that's fine, but this is your opportunity to add a gusset here. If you add an 1/8 inch gusset here, it'll close over all this much easier. And of course, I didn't do that on the first one, so I'm not gonna do it on the second because I want them to be the same. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention again. Okay, now that's the right height. Let's get it the right width. How'd we do? We did fine. Actually, I'm going to switch gears because this is a continuous pattern this way. It doesn't really matter because they're separated by that big piece in the middle a bit. I think it's time to clean my tip. Okay, just a reminder, we're on page 5. Voila! Moving right along. Okay, that is done. Now we're going to go ahead and install these. And again, it's the same thing. It was an 8x8 and it was cut in half. And I'm going to get my white paper under here so I can see my edges all the way around. Okay, that looks good. So it's just a little too wide. Okay, I'm going to check one more time to make sure that the pattern is continuous, and it is. So I'm ready to glue it down. Remember to trim from the outside edges so that the center pattern continues to flow together. Let's see if I got enough off. Looks right. We're wanting that straight continuous line. Get off my extra glue. Lovely. Okay. There we go. Now I need to narrow this a little. Make it a little bit shorter. Let's try that. Let's see how we did. Ooh, a little bit more. Okay, that should do it. Yeah, and because of all the height that I just created by adding, you know, all these layers, I'm gonna really want to pay attention to steering clear of that hinge, that score line, because it won't want to lay down. It's already bulky, so stay out of your hinge / score line. Okay, so page 4 and 5 now are mostly done. So we've got all the insides done. Like I said, we're going to build these from the inside out. Okay, now we're ready to take a look at adding these layers. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit off the height here. So like I said, the other option is to trim a piece off the bottom and lay it down inside. But if I do that, I really only need it on the one side. I don't need it on this side. It's okay if, that's upside down. It's okay if that blue line shows. And I think I'm going to be okay with that because like I said, there's going to be a tag in here. So most of the time, you're not going to see the whole pattern. You're only going to see the pattern revealed when the tags are pulled out. So given that, I am going to go ahead and shorten this piece off the top. And I'll do the same on the other side. And we're just gonna have to go a little at a time. Because of the curve that's being created, it's making it a little bit more challenging to figure out where to lay this down. You have to clear the curve, otherwise the decorative paper is going to want to just keep lifting up. So I'm going to take just a tiny bit more. Okay, that should do it. Yeah. So I am going to go ahead and trim out this one based on that effort. I'm going to go ahead and draw a line and trim it, or at least check it. So page 5 should be about the same. And you put a line on this side. Okay. And there's my trim line. I think that's going to be right. So I'm going to try that first. We can always take a little more off if we need to. Okay, so it's starting to come together. Okay, I'm going to ink it and lay it in. So my goal is going to be to line up the top with the bottom. So that's how I'm going to look for my offset. I want to come basically straight up from there. Now it's really important to get that burnished into place so it doesn't want to come off that curve. And that should be fine. Okay, that's it. So now we're going to do this side. Let's get some ink on it. Okay, there we go. So there's our pattern starting to come together. Now we're going to add these two panels, and they go side by side. And I think this is a little bit wider than I like, but I'm okay with it. I'm going to leave it. I think it's going to be too hard to try to put something in between, and it looks right with what's going on down here. So it looks like a continuous line. So I'm going to leave that. Normally that would look a little wide to me, but because I have two pockets and, you know, two score lines, it is a little further apart down here. So now all we really need to do is trim it to the right height. So I'm going to use this piece as my guide and go ahead and mark it across the top here and trim. Let's see how that looks. It looks good. So I'm going to add some ink and lay it in. And we're coming to the end of page 4 and 5, which is probably the longest video I'll have. since we're accomplishing 2 pages at once, and it is one of the more complicated pages. Okay, I think I mentioned it before, but this is definitely from the 8x8 collection, the piece that I'm holding in my hand. Okay, that's page 5. We'll come back over here to page 4. We're going to do the same thing. I'm basically going to butt it right up against this piece and mark a trim line because I want that that border to be consistent straight across, and that's one of the ways to achieve it. And first of all, I need to make sure I cut the right end. Yep, that's right. Take a look at that now. Do we have a nice, a little more, I think. Yeah, a little bit more. How'd we do? We're right on. Okay, so let's get some ink and lay it in. And just want to show it to you one more time. So this is straight up and down. This pattern is just split, and it's going to go over here. But I'm just turning it to the side because it makes it easier for me to see my edges. Okay, so that is a lot of color blocking between the 2 pages. Okay, and then this is the last piece that's going to get laid in, and I'm actually going to apply this to the gusset inside. I think I'm going to apply it to the gusset inside of the album. Is that right? That doesn't look right. Yeah, that's right, but look how short it is. That doesn't seem right. So I may not put it in. Yep. It's going to wind up being short on the bottom, so I don't know if I'm going to use it or not. Either way, I'm going to like it. I don't want to put this in if it's staggered, if it's not making the pattern flow left to right. And one of the problems was I cut this out and I cut it to height before I knew what size these were going to be. As you can see, they're actually raised higher than I had originally planned. Had originally planned to have them like this. And because I trimmed off the top, they scooted up. So you still have a chance to fix that. If you decide you want to use this in your gusset, you will want to take that into consideration before you cut off either ends when you're laying this in, and make all those decisions at the same time. And hopefully that's clear. Basically, I cut this square, these out at the same time, then cut them in half. And I should have left this its full length, and then I could have moved it up or down depending on placement here. So anyways, hopefully that's clear. If not, you don't know what to tell you. Except for I still have a second one of these because I opened a second pack, and I may actually go cut this strip out of the other one and try to straighten it out. I haven't decided or not, so it really goes back to whether I want this on the cover or the lady's face on the cover. If I choose this for the cover, I won't have one to spare. So the other thing is I could, like I said, recut it here, and I haven't decided if I want to bother with that. I'll make that decision after I get these installed in the book. That is it for page 4 and 5, and that was plenty. I know this was a long video. Thanks everybody for tuning in. This is Daphne from Scrap and Create. If you're new to the channel, welcome. And if you've been here before and haven't subscribed, why not? Subscribe and you'll be notified every time we have new content. It's our goal to have new content out every 2 weeks. And when I say content, I mean a full tutorial for an album. So every 2 weeks, I hope to have an album ready for you guys to build on your own. So thanks again for tuning in. This is Daphne from Scrap and Create. We'll see you guys soon.